Hey everybody, welcome back to Matthew Kelly Pottery. I hope you are doing well. Today we're going to make some 1 pound vases, and as per usual, we're going to have a little conversation and tips and tricks along the way. So let's go. Alright, here we go. I am excited to be back on the wheel. I know you've seen a couple videos from me recently, and most of those, or at least 2 or 3 of those, I haven't been talking in. Not necessarily because I didn't want to, I just thought it'd be fun to throw a few pots and under that mood lighting, as I called it. And that was a lot of fun, and I'll be doing more of that because I really enjoy just sitting down throwing without talking and still being able to make a video out of it. So appreciate all of your feedback on those, and I hope that you enjoy them, and maybe you still can learn something from just watching me throw on those videos. And anyway, so first tip today, I'm actually going to be throwing these 1 pound vases and cutting them off the wheel. So we'll go through some tips of how I do that and things that I think will help you in removing pieces from the wheel if you are cutting under them with a wire. And I don't know why I felt like doing that today, but I did. I felt like actually cutting the vases off the bat and then moving them to another place. So I'm going to do that. And then also another tip, I actually using my sit down wheel, but I did raise the wheel up. So you can see here how I actually put bricks up under the legs of the wheel just to raise it up. If I'm ever making smaller pieces on my sit down wheel, I like to raise the wheel up so that I'm not leaning over as much as I'm throwing. So today I've raised the wheel up a little bit, and so you can see that here that the wheel is still kind of like, if I sit up straight, the wheel's about, or the top of the splash pan is about my belly button height, where normally it would be much lower. And so that helps, just helps my back and helps as I lean over not to have to lean over quite as far as I'm doing that. So I've got one round back here on the wheel, and I've put a little bit of wet clay underneath that to help it stick. And I have my 1 pound clay balls here, and we'll get started. Yeah, I have no lack of space or bats, so I don't necessarily know why I felt like cutting them off today, but I thought if nothing else it would benefit some of you out there who don't have a lot of bats or don't have a lot of space and do need to cut things off the wheel. I have seen some recent videos or posts where people were talking about removing things from the wheel, and some of them I thought, man, I would never do it that way. So I thought that was another reason that I thought would be a good idea to maybe talk about that a little bit. I don't have any specific shapes in mind at the moment, so I'm just kind of going with some shapes that I normally, or generally I think, are appealing, and not putting a requirement on myself of making anything any certain height or width or whatever. Just make something that's appealing and attractive to me, and I'm excited about the new color combination that I just got out of the kiln. My copper red over my layering glaze with root seal blue on the bottom, and excited to make some small vases that will go in that that combination to have on my next Etsy sale. The first one of 2021, which is going to be on February 26th. So excited about that, and excited about this new color. Alright, so we'll get through this first one here and we'll talk about removing pieces from the wheel, and then we'll go through some other details of the throwing of these small vases as we make a few more. Alright, I'm done throwing that one. So I would say my best tip for removing pieces from the wheel, if you have to wire them off, is to completely clean off the wheel around the bottom of the pot. I've seen several people talk about putting water on there and then pulling the water under the piece, and I have done that before. I did that more so when I first got started in pottery. But I have learned that if you clean off around the bottom of the piece really well, clean and dry your hands, pull the wire one time under the piece. I try not to pull the wire under the piece multiple times, because that can actually, you could actually cut it different layers, and you could actually create a thin layer of clay on the bottom of the piece, and then that would flake off or break later. And after you've cut that one time, have a spot ready that you're going to put the piece. If your hands are clean and dry, just pick that up, completely severed, and move it over to the bat. So that's the best way I've seen to do it. There are certain shapes that's not going to work well with, of course, but if you have a form that has a belly like that, where you can lift up underneath that belly or around the base of it and lift up, and if your hands are clean and dry, it pretty much comes off pretty easily. Alright, let's go on to the next one. And when I finish with one and I get ready to start the second, I don't even worry about taking that clay off the wheel. Just throw my clay ball down right on top of that little bit of clay that's already there, and just start throwing the next one. Depending on the type of vase that you're going to make, you need to, if you're going to make a taller, skinnier vase, definitely need to try to start out with a taller, skinnier cylinder to make it easier on yourself. And then if you're going to make a wider piece, especially with a wider mouth on top, you can start with a wider cylinder and it won't matter so much. But even if I'm going to make a fatter piece, but I want the top closed in, I'll still try to keep a fairly slender cylinder, because I don't want to have to draw in that top a whole lot if I'm able to keep it smaller, more slender. Every time I like to pull or shape, I like to clean off around the base there to give me a really nice fresh place to start from. Also, y'all have probably seen my video on how to make a foot on a piece, so I'll show that again real quick though. One of the things I like to do is take, once I've got the size of that, about the size of the base I want the vase or the piece, is to take my rib and hold it up off the wheel a little bit and push in and make some of that clay kind of stick out there and make that little roll, and I'll finish that a little bit of a shaping pull right there, and then I can come back and take that little bit of clay that I've left there, add some water, and then round that off to make my nice little bead or foot on the base of the piece. Alright, now round that just a little bit, and then I'm going to use that top section there to close that in and make a neck. I always like to use my sponge to add water to the top so that I'm not just dumping water that's running all down the side of the piece. If I use my sponge, I can kind of control where I put that water and how much I add on. And because I'm not trying for an exact shape, if I feel the clay getting a little bit weak, which I am right there, just wanting to buckle just a little bit right in there, I can just stop shy of making that a really skinny neck and just stop somewhere in between. And as long as I, like I said, as long as I make that a consistent or a shape that I think is attractive and something I'm happy with, then I'll just stop there and finish out a shape of the neck based on that size of a neck versus making it smaller. Like I said, once again, I'm going to clean off all the way down to the base. Have my towel behind me ready to clean and dry my hands off. Keep my wire right there. One pull under the bottom. And then right here around the base, lift up, and I kind of lift away from myself a little bit. I know one thing working against me making these vases right now is that these clay balls have been made for a couple weeks. They have been sitting in a container covered up with plastic, but still clay over time will develop hard and soft spots based on where air gets to it and where it doesn't. And so it probably would have benefited me to actually pug this clay again before I started throwing it, but I decided I wanted to just do it anyway because I didn't feel like taking the time to repug the clay, but it probably would make it easier on me. And there are times as a more beginning potter that you may not realize things like that are working against you. But over time you will realize things that you'll notice, like if you have fresh wedged or pugged clay, that it may throw a little bit easier depending on the shape that you're making. And then you may have tried clay that's been sitting around for a week or two, even though it's been in a bag or wedged up and sitting in a bag waiting to be thrown. If it sits there too long, it'll start to develop a little bit more of a harder skin on the outside, and it's still, this clay is still fairly soft. It's not too hard, but it's just that probably as I'm throwing, that hard and soft clay is enough of a difference that you'll have probably seen most of the necks that I've tried to make are starting to ripple a little bit. And I normally don't have that issue, and I actually think it's because of the clay sitting around a little bit too long, and I've got hard and soft clay working against each other. And so I just thought I'd stop and give you guys that tip really quick, and just tell maybe why you've seen some of that happening in these vases. And so if you encounter that, that possibly could be something that you're fighting against while trying to throw. So maybe at that point, stop and wedge your clay again, or run it through the pug mill again before you continue throwing, and you'll probably have an easier time. I've talked to several people who have wedged clay for years, and then bought a pug mill, which not everybody can do. I understand that, but then talk to those people after they got the pug mill and be like, man, I never knew the clay could throw so well after being pugged, and it is true. That's one of the reasons I love having a pug mill, is not only reclaiming the clay, but how well the clay throws after being pugged. So I'll take clay straight out of a bag, as you guys have probably seen me do several times, and run it through my pug mill before I throw it. It not only makes it easier for me to make the clay balls, but it definitely makes the working with the clay quite a bit easier on most pieces. Alright, we'll try something a little different on this one. I don't cone up and down when I center clay balls for the most part. Most of you have noticed that or mentioned that. But it's also, at times, I've heard it called wheel wedging. So I'm going to attempt doing some coning up and down. Even though, oh, I just about ripped that clay ball in half. Even though it's just a 1 pound clay ball, I'm going to attempt to cone up and then push back down and see if that gets the clay a bit more consistent. See if I can feel the difference in the consistency of the clay after doing that. Well, I'm sure you could probably tell, as I could tell, that actually made a difference, because I was able to comb that in a whole lot easier, no ripples, and now next thing I'm going to try is actually wedging some of these clay balls on my table over here and then throwing them, because I still noticed when I centered this clay ball that it was kind of fighting me to get centered, and that's not a normal thing as well. But even after I wheel wedged it or combed it up and down, I still felt that little bit of a fight to get centered, and that probably was from the clay that was at the center of the clay ball that doesn't necessarily get affected by the wheel wedging, not getting necessarily not getting wheel wedged or energized in that process. So let's cut this one off, and I'll wedge a couple clay balls, and we'll try another one. Alright, I put 2 clay balls together to wedge them because I don't like wedging 1 pound at a time. It's just a little bit too small of a clay ball for me, for my hands. Well, I can see a little bit of an air bubble there. I might have put that in there when I was wedging it, but either way. Alright, we'll do this one last clay ball here because I gotta go. I'm running up against the clock here for somewhere I have to be, and I just realized that. So this will be the last one, and then we'll wrap it up. So I'm not going to wheel wedge this one, but I'm going to just center it up and throw it. And I definitely can feel that it didn't fight me as much. Although, like I said, by seeing that little bubble, there might be an air bubble or two in here. I didn't, yeah, there is. I can feel them. So I need to work on my wedging. I don't have to wedge anymore, so I not quite as proficient or good at it as I used to be. but I can definitely tell you the clay feels much smoother in general. It's pulling better, and it just feels better, like I said, in general. Once I get rid of these couple air bubbles, it will be even better. Because I popped those air bubbles, I'm not going to try to make anything too fat, because those spots where I popped them might show back up if I stretch it too much. So I'm going to keep this one a bit skinnier. The reason I say that is because you can probably see right there is the spot where I popped one of those air bubbles, and probably could have smoothed it out a little better before I started throwing, but I know by throwing it'll get smoothed out pretty well. And then most of my glaze covers imperfections pretty well also. So just gonna do that much on the belly, and then comb that neck in a bit. Yeah, so if there weren't air bubbles in this one, I can definitely say that it feels better than all the previous ones, save only maybe the last one, which, because I wheel wedged that one, combed it up and down, it got more consistent. This one here, like I said, is probably only fighting me here on coning this in because of those air bubbles that were in there, and that created an inconsistency. Yeah, that was definitely wanting to ripple a little bit on top. And it just takes time to learn to deal with things like that and still come out with a decent piece. Early on, I definitely couldn't handle having that kind of inconsistency in my clay and still make a decent piece of pottery. So if you're dealing with that, don't worry about it. Just maybe wedge up your clay, try it again, and then work at it. The more you practice, the better you're going to be at that. And yeah, you can definitely see the ripples in that neck, but I think I can cover that with when I glaze it. So yeah, I'm going to throw the rest of those clay balls there, and we'll do a time lapse of that here for the end of the video. And appreciate all of your support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do that before you go if you want to see more content like this. And leave a like on the video, and share it with somebody if you think it'll benefit them like it did you. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it entertained you. I hope you learned something. And as always, thank you all for your support on all my social media and Patreon. You guys are amazing. And we'll see you in the next video. All right? Thanks. Bye.